Brand new chapter tonight. Moving right along in Tanya, chapter 27. We're making nice progress here, no? Nice headway. And what are we dealing with? We are middle of we began last chapter, 3 classes ago, with the theme of joy. The Alter Rebbe teaches us that to be a successful person, to be a successful Jew, you need to be happy. Which means you need to be in a good space, in a good frame of mind, emotionally. You need to feel confident. You just simply need to feel the energy of life pulsing through you. And you just need to have that just good feelings, good energy. And that is the way you can face the battles of life. It is not okay. It is not okay to not be happy. It's not okay to be sad. It's not okay to be depressed. I don't care what the reason is. The Alter Rebbe tells us this is something which we need to put active work into being happy, into creating a joyful atmosphere for our lives. So these chapters is where the Alter Rebbe is teaching us specific techniques, how to manage negative feelings, negative emotions, and make sure that we are always keeping ourselves in a very good space. And so far we dealt with a few topics of sadness. We dealt with the area of sadness and pain and stress and pressure from physical life, from material life, from practical life. We spoke about that. We spoke about guilt, the negative feelings of guilt. Today we're going to be dealing with a very interesting type of negative emotion, which is very, very critical. And it really touches upon the essence of our human character. So this is a very, very important chapter. Such a fundamental chapter. So dear friends, let us at least jump in. Let's read the first paragraph here. We'll get our feet wet in the chapter, and then we'll try to discuss what the issue, what the subject matter, what the problem of this chapter. So dear friends, in the handouts that I sent you today, chapter 27, the title of the chapter is Embracing Your Perfectly Imperfect Self. It's a nice title, no? And you already get an idea of what this chapter is about from that. It's part 1, shame of inappropriate thoughts. Says the Alter Rebbe, what if your depression is not from a nagging sense of guilt over sins, but from immoral fantasies, from the shame of having immoral fantasies and destructive urges that keep falling into your mind? Okay. We are all human. And especially we've learned enough Tanya to know that we have 2 souls. We have a godly soul, we have an animal soul. And the animal soul has a certain force of urges and desires that it's always looking to do. It's the instinctive drive of the animal soul, which we refer to as the Yetzer Hara, right? The evil inclination, which is pushing us to do and make unhealthy choices. And because of that, we are all very, very familiar with the reality of being human, that thoughts pop into our head and desires pop into our head, which are not always so good, not always so healthy, not always so moral. Sometimes they're really embarrassing. They can be very upsetting. How could it be that I'm having such thoughts? The Yetzer Hara hounds us with what we will call negative thoughts, improper thoughts, immoral thoughts, and just inappropriate thoughts on any single level. There could be moral issues, it could be religious issues, it could be interpersonal issues. It's every single area. No human being doesn't suffer from this. Now, practically speaking, the Alter Rebbe already taught us practically how to deal with this problem. In the earlier chapters of Tanya, these were in the teens chapters, the Alter Rebbe taught us the techniques. How do you be a successful person that even with having an animal soul, even with having a Yetzer Hara, you don't allow the Yetzer Hara to assert itself. Just because we have a unhealthy, animalistic urge and an animalistic desire doesn't mean we have to act upon it. We shouldn't act upon it. If you do act upon it, if it's a sin, it's a sin. That's no good. So practically, we dealt with how to not lose. We learned how to practically stay in control and not allow our urges to get the better of us. But here in this chapter, we're dealing with the emotional issue, the emotional pain. And it goes something like this. A young mom actually told me this, that all of her children, when they became teenagers, they all went through a very depressing phase of life as they're going through adolescence and starting to get to know themselves a little bit. They started being in tune to their own thoughts and their own desires and their own fantasies. And these teenagers started really flipping out. And they became horrified. They said, I'm such a bad person. And the realization that I have these thoughts, and therefore I must be a horrible person. I'm a monster inside. I'm a monster. On whatever level that is, I'm just a bad person. That could create tremendous deep shame. And it could be very, very painful. And a deep, painful shame that could be debilitating. It could stop you from being able to be joyous, from functioning properly and functioning joyously and feeling confident and happy about life and feeling fulfilled about life. So there's a very strong negativity over here of shame. Now, here's the thing about shame. Some people experience shame in a very, very overt, conscious way. Shame is on the front burner. This is something which is really nagging at them. Some people suffer from shame, and it's a back burner issue. It's more subconscious, but it's a certain nagging subconscious feeling that I am unworthy, I am not making good progress, I'm a loser, I'm really a bad person, I'm not a good person. I know I look like a good person, I'm not a good person, I'm a bad person, and things like that. But this problem of dealing with inner negative desires and thoughts and lusts just popping into your head, this is something which becomes a much bigger problem for people who are actually putting in real effort and they're trying to grow spiritually. Imagine if you're somebody who's putting in a lot of hard work to become a better Jew, to become more spiritually attuned, to become more spiritually sensitive, to become simply a better person, a more refined person, and you're praying harder, and you're learning more Torah, and you're learning Tanya, and you're implementing it. And then imagine a month in, all of a sudden, you're plagued by these old thoughts. The old demons have returned. And the thoughts keep on coming back, and they harass you, they haunt you. And imagine 5 years in, you think you're making progress, and the same thoughts come back. Not only will you feel shame, you'll start feeling the disappointment. Did I make no progress? I'm a failure. I guess it's not working. So there's shame, which leads to disappointment, a sense of failing, which leads you to say, forget about it. Throw in the towel. I don't care about this anymore. It's anyways not working out. I'm anyways not being a successful Jew. I'm trying to become a better person. It's not working. I'm anyways a bad person. So forget about it. So this is a very dangerous emotion. This is a very dangerous form of depression. That you simply feel so unworthy because you are continuously suffering from human animalistic desires and lusts and these short-sighted temptations, which we know is wrong, and we know we shouldn't be doing it, and we won't even do it, and for some reason it still comes back to our heads. And you hate it. Why do I need to be this way? And if it keeps coming back to me, we can start doubting ourselves. Maybe, in fact, I'm not a good person. Maybe I'm fooling myself by trying to act like a good person. Look at me. Look at all these desires that I have. So maybe I'm just living a hypocritical life. So as we see, shame is a very big problem. No? You agree with me? This issue of having the self-awareness that I am simply plagued by a lot of animalistic urges, by a lot of very unhealthy desires and thoughts, this itself could pull a person down, can totally deflate a person's energy. It could sap your energy. And it could be the beginning of a failure of a person. So this is a critical issue that the Alter Rebbe must address, and it's a critical issue which really touches upon our very human nature, the idea that we have a very animalistic side to us that sometimes people see, hopefully not, but we see, we sense it, we know it. And what do we make of that? What do we make of that? Are we bad people? What is that? So chapter 27. This chapter is going to begin addressing it. And chapter 28 really continues on the same theme. So we really have two chapters. We have two chapters here that are going to be on this theme. So let us continue learning. Let's actually bring it back from the top. Let's start from the beginning of the chapter. Says the Alter Rebbe, what if your depression is not from a nagging sense of guilt over sins? You're not guilty that you did something wrong. Guilty over doing something wrong, that was last week's class. Not last week, 2 weeks ago, right? 2 weeks ago, we learned about that. Okay, fine. You're guilty over what you did. Over here, you're not being guilty about what you did, but you're depressed from immoral fantasies, from the shame of these immoral fantasies and destructive urges that keep falling into your mind. It keeps on coming back. So the Alter Rebbe says like this. Let's say we are not talking about these thoughts falling into your mind during your time for prayer and study. We'll leave that for later. So if these thoughts come into your mind while you're studying Torah or while you're trying to pray, that's a niche issue. That's going to be next chapter. That's a more specific issue. You'll see next chapter why the Alter Rebbe is splitting the issues. But over here, the Alter Rebbe says, rather, let's talk now about these thoughts occurring when you are going about your everyday business. Let's just speak about it generally. You're just living your life and you're trying to be a good person, and you think you're a good person, and all of a sudden, really, really embarrassing and not good thoughts pop into your head, whether it's a thought, whether it's a desire, an impulse, whatever it is. So let us begin. What is the Alter Rebbe's response to this? And the Alter Rebbe is going to give us multiple points, and every single point builds even deeper and more upon the other one. Such a beautiful chapter here. Let us begin. Here's the first point of the Alter Rebbe. Such a simple, beautiful point. The Alter Rebbe says, you're sad. You're sad. You're feeling bad about yourself. Why? Because you have negative thoughts. Says the Alter Rebbe, there's actually no reason for you to be sad. It's totally unfounded. There's no grounds to be sad. Why? Let's read. If so, says the Alter Rebbe, on the contrary, you have good reason to celebrate. You have bad thoughts. You're sad. The opposite. Celebrate. What? Celebrate? Celebrate what? I'm having bad thoughts. Why should I celebrate? Says the Alter Rebbe, it's true. These fantasies fall into your mind. Yes, you do suffer from this problem. But nevertheless, you ignore and pay no attention to them. You are fulfilling the verse, and you shall not follow your heart and your eyes after which you stray. Says the Alter Rebbe, there's a mitzvah in the Torah, one of the 613 commandments, and it's actually part of the Shema. The Shema prayer in its entirety has 3 paragraphs. In the final paragraph, the third paragraph of the Shema, it has this verse: "V'lo sasuru acharei lebavchem va'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achareihem." And you shall not follow your heart and your eyes after which you stray. Which means, let's think about this verse. The verse is speaking to human beings, and we have hearts and we have eyes. Our eyes see things, and our hearts get tempted by those things. And then the imagery and the emotion, the feeling, sometimes tries pulling us, it tries seducing us, it tries pulling us astray. And that's part of being a human. The things we see, the things we hear, the things we understand start taking hold on us, and temptations come in, some of them which are very not good. And the verse tells us, don't follow those impulses. So the Alter Rebbe says, 1 second, you're telling me you have bad impulses. You're telling me you have bad thoughts. And you're telling me that your problem is not that you actually committed a sin. You're telling me that your problem is that you're ashamed about who you are. You're not feeling good because of who you are, because you have these thoughts. Says the Alter Rebbe, I don't understand what you're upset about. You should be very, very happy. Why? Because you got a mitzvah. Right? What did AOL used to say, right? You've got mail. Remember that? So the Alter says, I've got amazing news for you. You've got a mitzvah. What are you upset about? This is a wonderful reason to celebrate. This is not a problem. You just had an amazing opportunity, and you've done it. You had the opportunity to do a mitzvah. You did the mitzvah. That is amazing. Continues the Alter Rebbe. After all, who is this text talking about? This verse, you shall not follow your heart and your eyes to stray. Who is this talking about? Obviously, it's not talking about tzaddikim, to call them strayers, God forbid. You know, tzaddikim, they have no evil within them. Tzaddikim are perfect, not just in action, but within their hearts and souls. If you could do a spiritual x-ray of a tzaddik, you will see they don't have a yetzer hara. They never have an unhealthy impulse, which is an amazing thing. It just shows us how far away we are from actually being a tzaddik. So this verse can't be talking about a tzaddik. Tzaddikim don't go astray, which is an amazing thing. When you have a tzaddik, there's one mitzvah that a tzaddik cannot do. Not because they don't want to do it, but because it's impossible for them to do it, which is this mitzvah. There's one of the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. If you are a tzaddik, you are simply handicapped. You can't do this mitzvah, which is, you shall not follow your heart and your eyes after which you stray. A tzaddik does not have a heart and eyes that pull him astray. So he can't do this mitzvah. So the Alter Rebbe says, this verse is not addressing tzaddikim, because it's not applicable to them. They don't suffer from this problem. Rather, says the Alter Rebbe, this verse is speaking about Beinanim, such as yourself. All of us are on the level. We have the souls of the Beinani, who do have lustful thoughts popping into their minds, sometimes for permissible things, and sometimes, sometimes for not the best things. So says the Alter Rebbe, you are the subject matter of this verse in the Torah. The Torah gives us a mitzvah, and the Torah is acknowledging, point blank, our humanity. We are all human, and we all suffer from good impulses and negative impulses, because we have an animal soul, we have a yetzer hara. And you're getting all depressed about it. Says the Alter Rebbe, I don't understand you. This is just fine. Like, welcome to life. This is the reality of life. We're human. And there's a special mitzvah in the Torah that we get to fulfill because of these situations. So instead of being ashamed by it, embrace the opportunity that you right now have a mitzvah. And the Alter Rebbe says, just like if you would have any mitzvah, when you're given the opportunity to do a mitzvah, and then you do the mitzvah, sometimes it feels so good, no? Sometimes different opportunities for mitzvahs come by. For example, I don't always have the opportunity to try to think of an example. There are sometimes when a mitzvah comes, especially like helping another person, where an opportunity landed in your lap and you did it and you just feel so good. That's amazing. I feel so good about myself. It made my day, it made my week. I was in the right place at the right time. Somebody's car broke down. They needed help getting from here to there. I was able to help them. I feel so good about it. It just feels great. The opportunity for a mitzvah landed, we did it, it feels amazing. The Alter Rebbe says that's exactly what's happening over here. Let's read. We're on top of page 203. So when you distract your mind from such thoughts, that is how you perform this mitzvah. And our rabbis taught, this is a quote from the Talmud, someone who sits tight and does not sin is rewarded just like someone who fulfilled a mitzvah. So if so, you should celebrate fulfilling a mitzvah by not doing with the exact same joy as if you had fulfilled a mitzvah by doing. Teaching of the Talmud. The Talmud says, take a mitzvah like don't steal. There's a mitzvah, do not steal. It's one of the 10 Commandments, right? Now here's the interesting question. When do you get the mitzvah of do not steal? For example, I did not steal today. I don't think so. Did I get the mitzvah of do not steal today? Is every day another mitzvah? Is every minute a mitzvah? No, that's not what it is. It's not like you're getting mitzvahs every single second for every single time you don't sin. It has to be that the opportunity presented itself to you, and you were tempted by it. You were tempted to steal. The thought crossed your mind. You got the urge, you got the temptation. The thought landed in your mind. And what do? So the Talmud says, when you sit tight, which means you hold yourself back, which takes a lot of willpower, and you don't do it, you just got the mitzvah. That is how you do the mitzvah. So somebody could be looking at you, and you're just sitting on the couch. They could think you're just taking it easy. Meanwhile, you are in tremendous self-control mode. You are tempted by doing something, and you are sitting tight and not doing it. That's a big moment. Talmud says, you just got, that sitting tight and doing nothing is as if you just did a big mitzvah. You just did a mitzvah. So think about the experience of doing a mitzvah, and you feel fulfilled, and it feels good, and it's good for your soul, it's wonderful. That is exactly what happens when you had the opportunity to do a sin, and you held yourself back. So the Alter Rebbe says, look at this. You tell me you have bad thoughts. First of all, that's a setup for a mitzvah. And then, okay, if you acted upon the bad thought, that's no good. That's a moral failure. That's bad. That was a bad choice. That's not good. But if you didn't do it, you didn't do the sin. You didn't act upon it. You held yourself back. You pushed away the thought. The Alter Rebbe says, that's amazing. You're getting all depressed about it. What I'm telling you is that you were just set up for a mitzvah. That's wonderful. So what the Alter Rebbe says is there's no shame in the fact that we have negative thoughts. There's no shame that we have negative impulses. It's part of human nature. We're going to be addressing that right now. And in fact, we should embrace the reality, the opportunity that we simply have a mitzvah. It's one of the mitzvahs that Hashem gave us. We have the opportunity to do that mitzvah. And here's the basic idea. The Alter Rebbe is not saying at all that a negative thought is something to not be worried about. We have to be cautious about it because we don't want to act upon it. And even thinking, even fantasizing is a form of action. So you could say, well, I thought about something for 20 minutes. No harm done. I didn't actually do anything. No, that is a problem. Even thought is a problem in Judaism. That's part of this verse, right? Don't allow the seduction of your heart and your eyes to take hold of you. So if you're giving it mental space, that itself is already giving it space. You're welcoming it in. So the action is bad. But the mere fact you have those impulses, there is no moral failure there. That's not bad. That's just part of being human. So the Alter Rebbe says, don't be depressed about it. The opposite. Realize that this is the opportunity for you to do a mitzvah. So number one, don't be sad. In fact, you should be happy. Happy that what? Happy that you have the opportunity to do mitzvahs and that you're doing mitzvahs. You're actively engaged in doing a mitzvah. But this takes us to the next point. And this is cutting even deeper, going even deeper into the idea. When somebody is experiencing this form of shame, they're embarrassed about themselves. They're disappointed in themselves. Is that a good feeling or is that a bad feeling? What would you say? Is that a good feeling to experience about yourself? Like, this is not okay. I'm really not happy that I'm having these thoughts. Is that self-awareness and is that feeling of dejection? Is that a positive thing? Is that a holy thing? Or is that no good? What would you say? Is that coming from piety, that feeling? Evgeny, you're saying no? It doesn't come from a good place? Why not? You want to unmute?
I'm just thinking that the self-awareness is good, but the point is not to belittle yourself, right?
Like, the point is not to belittle yourself.
It's when you
so
have that initial, recognize the mitzvah to choose not to follow your heart or your eyes.
Right.
So thinking badly about yourself is not.
So not to think bad about yourself, right? So maybe I shouldn't feel bad about myself, but I think the argument could go intuitively, but at least it's a good thing. It's a good thing to feel bad about yourself, no? It's a good thing to be aware of your problems, and if you don't feel bad about your problems, then that's not good. Then you're flippant.
I think it's like when we talk about like the Rebbe, where you focus on the issue, not the person. So when you're looking at yourself, again, it's not you dismiss your entire personality. You recognize that thought is not good.
Oh, no, right. But this chapter is dealing with yourself. That's the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is you're guilty about something that you did. Shame is shame about yourself, about your own identity. I think intuitively we would think that it's coming from a good place. That if somebody is worried about their spiritual standing, about the moral standing, it's a good thing. It's good that you're worried about yourself. Not every guy in the street is worried about their moral and spiritual standing. You are. That looks like it's a good thing. It looks like it's coming from a good place. The Alter Rebbe says no. It's not true. In fact, the very idea that you are bothered by the fact that you have these thoughts is coming from a totally unhealthy place. What is that unhealthy place? The unhealthy place, which is making you feel all bad about yourself, is a overinflated ego. Arrogance. You are so arrogant that now this is becoming an issue for you. Now, what does that mean? Let me explain this to you. Let's talk a little bit about disappointment. When there's frustration, which leads to disappointment. Where does frustration come from? Where does disappointment come from? There are things in life which frustrate us. There are other things in life which don't frustrate us. What is the cause? It's one word in the English language. One word in the English vocabulary. What is it that makes us frustrated? One word. What's that one word? What do you say?
Failure.
David, go for it. Huh?
Failure.
No. A lot of things frustrate us which aren't failure.
Ego.
No.
Okay.
One word. What makes us frustrated? What's the difference between when we will get frustrated and we won't get frustrated? It's one word. One very simple word.
Expectation?
Oh, thank you, Elki. Expectations. Expectations. When there is an expectation, when there's a certain expectation for something, when that doesn't happen, you get frustrated. When there's no expectation, you don't get frustrated. Think about it very simply. Let me ask like this. Is a half-hour drive frustrating? Is a half-hour drive frustrating? What do you say? Is that a yes or no question?
Depends where you're going.
Ooh, or it depends how long the drive is meant to be. If the drive is meant to be 5 minutes, but it ends up taking you a half hour, oh, that's very frustrating. But if it's meant to take a half hour, then it's no problem. So frustration is a very, very subjective experience. Nobody gets frustrated by the fact, nobody looks up to the heavens, to the skies, and sees birds flying, and then gets upset and disappointed and frustrated that I can't fly. Why? Because we have no expectations for it. If it's too windy or there's a storm and the power goes out for 2 days, thanks to DTE, then what happens? You get frustrated. Why? Because we had the expectation there should be power on 24/7. And if all of a sudden my fridge is going bad because I lost power for 3-4 days, I have to throw everything out, that's very frustrating. I'm not expecting this. My expectations are different. So disappointment and frustration stems from the expectations we set. So the Alter is saying you are getting all worked up. You're getting bothered by the fact that you don't like the way you look. You're getting frustrated with yourself. You're getting ashamed of yourself. You're feeling like a failure, like a moral failure. The Alter says, whoa, 1 second. Where did these expectations come from? If you're getting frustrated by the fact that you're having these bad thoughts, that must mean that you had the expectation that you should be somebody that doesn't have these thoughts. And the Alter says, well, guess what? That expectation is a false expectation. And because it's a false expectation, it's an unhealthy expectation. And that unhealthy, false expectation comes from an overinflated ego that you think you could become a tzaddik. You think you should become a tzaddik. And that is unhealthy. If there's one trait that captures the essence of the Alter Rebbe, it is truth, honesty. The Alter Rebbe loved honesty and fought for honesty, fought for truth. You gotta be honest with yourself. You gotta be real with yourself, even if it's uncomfortable sometimes. But let's be real. Where did this expectation come from? You're hoping, you're planning to be a Jew that doesn't have bad thoughts? Where does this come from? It's a bad expectation. Let's read. Such a powerful piece of Tanya over here. The shame is coming from your ego. Let's read. So you think that you're all holy. You think it's coming from your good place, from your holiness, from your piety, that you are bothered by these thoughts. Says the Alter Rebbe, on the contrary, your depression stems from arrogance. What's the arrogance? For you don't recognize your place. You're not being real with yourself. You're not being honest with yourself. You don't recognize your place. And therefore, your inflated ego makes you feel bad that you are not on the level of a tzaddik. For inane thoughts like this certainly don't fall into the minds of tzaddikim. So tzaddikim don't suffer from these negative impulses, inappropriate impulses. And now you're getting worked up that you have. Then what? You think you should become a tzaddik? You have a totally inflated ego. Says the Alter Rebbe, if you would only know your place, if only you would be real with yourself. Know your place, that you are very distant from the level of a tzaddik. To be a tzaddik is not in your deck of cards. It's not what it means to live. Rather, says the Alter Rebbe, if only you could be a Beinoni and not a Rasha for even one moment of your entire life. Stop trying to be a tzaddik. Be a Beinoni. Be real with yourself. A tzaddik is somebody who changes, becomes a different person. They used to have inner negativity, now they have no inner negativity. That's a tzaddik. Tzaddik is somebody who's able to take all negativity and throw it out to the point that they have no more negativity inside of them. That's not what it means to be a regular human being. We're the 99%. Tzaddikim are the 1%. They're the minority. We're the regular people. We should look to be a Beinoni. And a Beinoni means that we do have to contend with our own inner evil. And if we will accept that and set that for our expectations, it won't bother us that we have these negative thoughts, because we'll know that that's what it means to be human. So the Alter Rebbe says, I'm sorry, the mere idea that you're even being bothered by this is already a sign of unhealth. It's a sign of spiritual unhealth. The basis of spiritual health is being very honest with yourself, knowing your place, being real with yourself. Stop fooling yourself. Don't delude yourself. And says the Alter Rebbe, this is the capacity and the job of the Beinoni. To conquer the urges and the fantasies that rise from his heart to his brain. Conquer them. When you have an urge, stop it. Get the better of it. Don't let that urge, don't let that fantasy get the better of you. You get the better of it. To distract his mind entirely from them. Distract yourself. Don't engage. Don't allow it to come in. And to push them away with both hands. I love the descriptive imagery here, no? Push that thought away with both hands. Use force, as we learned earlier. The Alter Rebbe says, be real with yourself. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to humanity. Be real with yourself. Stop thinking that you could become a superhuman. Stop thinking that you become a super Jew, that you'll stop having a Yetzer Hara, you'll stop having impulsive negative thoughts. Where does this come from, says the Alter? You're being arrogant. You're not being real with yourself. Real means you know, I'm not a tzaddik, I'm a Beinoni. I'm a human. I'm born with a Yetzer Hara. I'm born with an animal soul, and I'm going to die with it as well. And if I have it, that means I'm always going to have to deal with it. I always have to deal with these negative thoughts. So don't get all depressed that you're having them. Don't surrender and say, well, I lose because, look, I keep on having them, so I must be a failure. Know that this is what it means to be a Beinoni. Welcome to life. This is what it means to be a Beinoni. And set that as a healthy expectation. And then you could embrace the reality. You could rejoice in the opportunity to do the mitzvah. But the Alter Rebbe says, you are a Beinoni. You're not a tzaddik. Set the healthy expectation. I once heard a talk from a Chabad psychologist. He's actually a rabbi and a psychologist. So a Chabad rabbi psychologist. And he was speaking about the idea of how to prepare today's youth for teenage life, for adolescence. And, today's youth, today's teens are exposed to so much more. And the realities of life are very, very different today. So parents have to be a little bit more on their game in making sure to be properly communicated with their children, to help prepare them properly for the realities of life, for the realities of life as they mature and the struggles that come with it. Especially as young boys enter adolescence, start maturing, and to make sure that these young children have the proper support from their parents. And I thought this was such a brilliant line. This Chabad rabbi psychologist, he says that this was his suggestion. That every single father should sit down with their son as they are entering adolescence, and sit down and tell your boy, welcome to real life. Welcome to the men's club. Welcome to being a real, regular human being. And part of being a regular human being, and as you get older, and as you transition from being a child to starting to become an adult, you'll realize some things about your body. You'll learn a little bit about your own temptations, about your own desires, some of them which are unhealthy. And you're normal. Tell the child that they're normal. Don't be ashamed about yourself. This is real life. Welcome to all of us. We're all in the same boat. And share with the child that part of life is that struggle of having an unhealthy side to you, the Yetzer Hara that is impulsive, and empower the child to not get scared by it and to not feel like a failure and a spiritual failure and a religious failure because you're having these impulses, but to learn that this is what life is about. Like exactly what the Alter is telling us over here. It is so healthy to have a healthy expectation of life, of who we are, and not to have a delusional expectation of life, which just sets us up for failure. It sets us up for disappointment, inner delusion, inner it's just horrible. Okay. And then the Alter Rebbe says like this. The Alter Rebbe is telling us something which is on the one hand extremely brutally honest, but it could also be a little bit of a difficult pill to swallow. Let's think about what the Alter Rebbe is telling us. The Alter Rebbe is saying, let's set expectations. You're a Beinoni. You'll never become a tzaddik. You're not meant to become a tzaddik. What that means is that you have negative thoughts and thoughts that really bother you. You would really rather not have them, and it feels like they're just dragging you down, and you ignore them. But even though you ignore them, but they still come back. And the Alter Rebbe says, yes, that's life. Welcome to life. That's not going away. And you realize that life is not so peaceful. To live a moral, spiritual life is a struggle, and the struggle is real, and the struggle doesn't go away. And it's a little bit of a tough pill what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The Alter Rebbe is not saying, work a little bit harder, and you'll see at some point you'll get to some stage where just all the evil within you leaves, and you mature, and you grow, and you graduate, and you're done with all these petty and improper and embarrassing and immoral and lustful thoughts. That's not what the Alter Rebbe says. The Alter Rebbe says, no. You're going to have them for the rest of your life. You had them when you're 25, you'll have them when you're 95. No matter how old you live, you'll always be dealing with negative thoughts from your Yetzer Hara. So the Alter Rebbe really focuses for the rest of the chapter, and it's a very deep idea, to the idea that your life is extremely purposeful. We are touching upon the very essence of life. When you think about it, most people are not looking for a comfortable life. We all say we want comfortable lives. We all say we want a very convenient lives. We want to have not a single stress in the world. We want to have every single comfort, every single luxury. We all say that, but that's not what we really want. There are a lot of people who are so wealthy, so affluent, so comfortable, and they're miserable. What we really want is to feel that we're living a meaningful life, a purposeful life. If we know that what we're doing is meaningful and purposeful, that's really the secret sauce of life. If we have that, then we're good in life. The Alter is going to tell us being a Beinoni has tremendous purpose, has tremendous value. Most people would probably think that the goal of life is to reach perfection, some form of perfection. The Alter Rebbe says no. The goal of life, the purpose of life, is within the daily struggle. The struggle itself is the purpose. So the Bain, and he thinks that every single time he is being plagued and being haunted by a negative thought, that's holding him back from advancing. It's holding him back from fulfilling his mission. So he says, oh, another bad day, another failure. The Alter Rebbe says, no, that's the point. You are living the moment of purpose. And let's read. This is a very deep idea, dear friends. We're going to read it. We're going to learn a little bit today, but we're going to have to continue next week. Page 204. Your struggle is sacred and precious. Let's read what the Alter Rebbe says. The Alter Rebbe says, and I just want you to know that not only you should have healthy expectations, you're going to have to contend with these negative thoughts, but says the Alter Rebbe, with every single push by which you expel these negative thoughts from your mind, you are defeating the Sitra Achor here in our lowly world. Sitra Achor is a term that we used for the negative forces, the force of unholiness within all of creation, all of reality. This is the force. We all have a little bit of Sitra Achra within our own heart, within our own animal soul. And when the Sitra Achra inside us, within our own mini-universe, asserts itself, and we ignore it, we are defeating the Sitra Achra here in our little world. And the Alter Rebbe says, and this is a very big spiritual idea, and when you do your job down here, it has an effect in the higher realm. This is a big idea in Judaism, especially in Jewish mysticism. God placed the levers of all of reality within the Jewish heart. When a Jew does something within his own personal life, it has a cosmic effect. The micro affects the macro. The mini has an effect on the whole larger scale. So the Alter Rebbe says there as well, also in the higher realms, in heaven, in the spiritual worlds as well, the Sitra Achra, which soars upward as an eagle, is defeated, bringing to fulfillment what the verse says, if you will lift yourself up like an eagle, from there I will throw you down, says God. So what is happening? Let's think a little bit what's happening. Whenever we have a negative thought, a negative impulse that is coming up from our animal soul, the Sitra Achra inside of us, is asserting its power. It's like soaring up like an eagle. It's trying to send an impulse. It's like galvanizing itself. It's like, let's go to battle. Let's try. So they send an attack, a negative thought, a negative impulse. And it goes from your heart to your brain. It says, let's think about it. What do? You push it down. You say, no, I'm not allowing you to assert your power. I'm going to defeat you. I'm going to throw you down. When a Jew does that, you do that in heaven as well. When a Jew does that in their little life, it seems so unglamorous. It seems like such a small moment. I have to deal with my own inner negativity. But you know what's happening when a Jew does that? We're going to learn soon from the Kabbalah, from the Zohar, where it says this. You are doing that in the heavens. The Sitra Achra above asserts itself, and when the Jew knocks down the Sitra Achra within their own heart, it blows a crushing defeat to the Sitra Achra on a cosmic scale. So you think you're just going through a little struggle within your own heart and soul. Meanwhile, this has repercussions for all of existence. And what we quote over here is a verse from Obadiah, from the prophet Obadiah. He's giving a prophecy about the times of Mashiach, where God is going to take the forces of evil who rise up like an eagle, and God is going to throw them down. And what makes that happen? It's the action of a Jew doing that within their own mini-universe. Continues the Alter Rebbe. The Zohar, right, the classic book of Jewish mysticism, in Parshas Teruma, page 128a, you go look it up if you would like, marvels over the tremendous enjoyment brought to God when the Sitra Achra is defeated down here in our world. The Zohar says, then God's glory rises above. It goes beyond any other praise and reaches higher than anything else can reach, etc. which means God created the world with goodness and evil, and the job of mankind is to defeat evil, defeat unholiness, and to make the world into a holy place. And it all begins within your own heart and soul. When you do these little acts that to you, they just seem like a nuisance. Why do I have to deal with this evil? Well, actually, that's the whole point of life. The whole point of life is that we could crush our own evil, overcome our own evil, create the triumph of holiness, of goodness, over negativity, over evil, over unholiness within our own heart and soul. And that does that on a cosmic scale. So the author is saying, when you go through these moments of negative thoughts, this is big stuff going on over here. The very essence of life, the very purpose of life. Nothing brings greater pleasure to God than when we get to have these moments. And we crush and defeat our own inner negativity. So says the Alter Rebbe, and here's a critical line. So don't feel discouraged or overly distressed, even if you will spend your entire life in this battle. Don't be worried. Why? Perhaps it is for this that you have been created. Perhaps this is your task in life, to constantly struggle with and suppress the Sitra Achra. So you look at your inner demons and your inner negativity and your Yetzer Hara and you say, God, why do you have to give me a hard life? Let me live a comfortable, good Jewish life. Let me do my purpose. And I don't want to have all this. And the Alter Rebbe says, you're missing the whole point. That is the point. The point is the struggle. The point is that we do that work of overcoming the evil within our own heart and soul, which really cleanses the world. It changes the balance in all of creation, within the entire universe, on a spiritual level, of good versus evil. So the Alter Rebbe says, you have to realize you're of critical importance. You have a tremendous mission in this world. Very powerful. Okay, we're going to conclude today's class with the next little paragraph here in Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe had a question which has been hanging since chapter 1. Now, I don't know if any of you remember this question. I don't expect you to remember from, over 2 years ago when we learned chapter 1 of Tanya. But the Alter Rebbe asked a question in chapter 1, and he doesn't answer the question until now, which is quite a thing to do, no? What was the question? There's a man, his name was Job. Eov. You ever heard of Job? One of the books of the Bible, one of the books in Tanakh. And the book of Job is about a man which the Talmud actually discusses if he actually ever existed. It's possible that the whole book of Job is a metaphor. It is a hypothetical. It is a novel, essentially. It's not an actual story, but it's a story intended to express ideas, not that the story itself happened. But it's a debate in the Talmud. Some said it actually did happen. Interesting. So Job, the Talmud quotes Job, that Job challenges God. Job tells God, how can you punish people? How can you reward people? It's not fair. Because you created people righteous, you created people wicked. So if you made them righteous, why are you rewarding them? If you made them wicked, how could you punish them? The interesting thing is that the Talmud accepts Job's argument. The only problem is that argument is a very problematic statement. We Jews, Judaism believes that God gave every single man free choice. None of us are made to be evil. None of us are made to be righteous. That is a moral choice that only we can make. But here Job is saying, no, God, you made them righteous. You made them wicked. And the Talmud doesn't refute Job's statement. It doesn't say, oh no, Job, you're wrong on that. The Talmud accepts it. Yeah, that's an argument. So how do we reconcile Job's statement that you made Rishayim, you made people to be wicked, with this cardinal belief that we are actually fully in control of our actions? And the Alter Rebbe says, now we could explain that statement. Job wasn't saying that God made us to actually be wicked. What Job was saying is that God made us with the tendencies, the impulses for wickedness, which is all of us. We all have the impulse to do good. We also have some not goodness within our own hearts and souls, which the Alter was saying that's normal, that is human, and it's not going away. It's not going away. It's part of life. And you should embrace your purpose in life, which is specifically that, instead of being all dejected by that. So the author says, now we could start understanding Job's statement, which was a question from chapter 1. So let's read, bottom of page 204. Says the Alter Rebbe, this idea of being born to struggle is what Job had in mind when he said, you created Rishaim. You created people to be evil. He didn't mean that God created them predestined to be actually wicked. God forbid. No, that wouldn't work. It doesn't mean that God made us to be evil. Rather, he meant that God created people who would have thoughts and fantasies just like the deeds of the wicked. You don't do them. You're not actually wicked. But you could relate to those fantasies. You could relate to those thoughts. You have those thoughts sometimes. And says the Alter Rebbe, they would then be engaged in a constant battle to distract their mind from these thoughts in order to defeat the Sitra Achra, but they will not be able to eradicate it entirely, for that is accomplished only by tzaddikim. So now we have the answer to Job's statement. You're created to be Russia-like, meaning the Russia and the Beinoni are the exact same person. The Russia is the person who allowed his negative impulses to control his life, and the Beinoni is the person who has the same impulses, but learned how to control them. Doesn't allow them to become manifest in their lives. So the Alter Rebbe says, when Job said, you created Rishaim, he's basically saying, yeah, you created people to be Beinonim. And now they have that choice to be that way. So the Alter Rebbe says, but now we could appreciate that statement. But here's the idea. What the Alter Rebbe is saying is that we have to really, really embrace our flawed selves, and we have to appreciate it. And that's really what the Alter Rebbe is going to. We have to realize that there's tremendous purpose and meaning, not despite our flaws, but because of our flaws. God made us purposely to have to contend with evil. And in our struggle with our own evil, that is our purpose in life. And dear friends, this is a very deep idea. We're going to continue developing this idea next week as we continue learning through chapter 27. And with that, what can I tell you? I think we're going to wrap up for tonight. I want to thank you all for joining. I want to wish you all a wonderful evening.
Rabbi?
And of course, if we have any thoughts and questions, let's open the floor. Let's farbring. L'chaim. Yes, Joel.
Well, it makes a lot more sense now. I remember when we first started this, I asked you, I don't want to be a Rasha, I want to be a Beinonin and everything like that. And this finally comes to the point where it makes more sense. We're on our way to being a Beinonin, whether you're a Rasha or not. Your Rasha is trying to be a Beinonin, and the Beinonin is trying to stay a Beinonin.
Or in other words, being a Rasha and a Beinoni are the same type of person.
Right.
And there's this tremendous journey in between the two far spectrums. So how well are we doing? Russia means we are not doing that well and living a good life. Beinoni means we're doing better. But it's not like two different people. It is a continuum.
But you still have the chances of Russia to try and become a Beinonin as
For
time.
sure.
That would be a mitzvah, right?
For sure, exactly. We are all on that journey. And let's be honest with ourselves. I'll talk about myself. I am not a Beinoni. At least what I do feel is that I'm always on the road. I'm always on a journey. Every single day I am faced with my own challenges, my own decisions to make.
It makes a lot more sense now that we were discussing it later on in the chapters than it did before. That was a naive look earlier in the chapters.
I won't call it naive, but Tanya, you have to realize something about Tanya. One of the things that Tanya does too, Tanya doesn't just teach you. Tanya totally changes. Tanya gives you a whole new way to look at life, which is one of the amazing things of Tanya, which is Tanya is really revolutionary in the way that it changes. It doesn't just give you new insight. It changes the way you think about life. Tanya really transforms your outlook. I really see that myself. So in that way, there are a lot of times when you learn Tanya that it's a process. You have to slowly allow Tanya to teach you a new way of looking at things. And the more that you pick up that new way to look at things, the more everything starts making sense.
It changes the way your thoughts are when it
Mm.
comes to it. It does. It really
Yeah,
does.
exactly it. But
Okay.
I love what you said, that now you can start appreciating yeah. So at the beginning, it's scary when you hear what I'm a Russia, and then you
Right,
realize the
right.
ultimate saying, this is not a death sentence. It isn't a condemnation.
Right.
It's where we're trying to understand where we are in life and where we're heading to.
But if you would have said this at the beginning without going through all this, it might have been much more difficult to understand. You
Yeah,
have
I
to,
don't think you would have understood
yeah,
it, right?
right.
Yeah.
You have to go through the right everything.
Listen, there's somebody who joined this class, and he didn't tell me, but I heard this from somebody else, without saying any names. He left the class because he got scared. He heard once that basically, oh, I'm a Russia, and he's like, all right, I'm not coming back to this class. Um, I guess Tanya is not for the faint of heart. No, to learn Tanya, you got to be very brave. You have to be willing to accept honesty and truth, even when it makes you feel uncomfortable, which is a very hard thing. The Alter Rebbe lost tens of thousands of followers. This is a tradition of Chabad. If the Alter Rebbe simply toned down a little bit on his insistence for honesty, he would have had tens of thousands of more followers. But the Alter Rebbe was unyieldingly loyal to truth, to honesty, even if it was too hard for some people. This says tens of thousands that they came to the Alter Rebbe, and the honesty was simply too brutal. It was too hard. It takes a lot of guts.
It's totally a hard thing to do,
Yeah.
but you're going against you're going against yourself,
Right.
and sometimes you become ashamed, and you become, you're
Oh, but you have to learn Tanya. Tell you, don't be ashamed.
right. But I'm not now. I'm not.
Right. So exactly, no, it's meaning it costs a lot more money. It costs a lot more kishkas. It's a lot
Right.
harder on you to be honest with yourself.
Absolutely.
But it pays off. So yeah, and the more you learn, the more you could embrace it, the more comfortable it gets. At the beginning, it's hard, but the more you learn, the more you internalize it. Actually, the more beautiful it is. The more you
very,
you
very,
to
very
accept it.
deep philosophy. Very, very deep
Yeah.
and beautiful too, actually.
Exactly, deep and beautiful.
Yeah.